All right, we're going to start with our next speaker. So Linda Curtis was going to do this event, but she unfortunately couldn't make it. So we have Liz Miller with the same organization, the League of Independent Voters of Texas. It's an organization that tries to engage with minor parties and independent voters and sort of inform Texans about what's going on outside the duopoly. And I think you're an attorney, right?
I am.
Yeah, so, us attorneys have to stick together. And she's got some good news for us.
I apologize sincerely.
And so let's turn over to Liz Miller.
Thanks, you guys. I appreciate it. I really appreciate you having me here. I know you wanted Linda. I'm not Linda. I hope to aspire to be Linda, more like Linda every day. I am a huge fan of Linda Curtis, so I encourage you to invite her back. Unfortunately, she had a critter, which is, she didn't want to give it to you. So I'm here instead. I will do my best to try to measure up, but please go learn about Linda and have her back. She's an amazing force of nature. I haven't known her that long. This year we worked together at the legislature in Austin, and I wouldn't trade that experience for the world. Let me tell you about the League of Independent Voters real quick a little bit. Well, first I should probably tell you who I am. I'm Elizabeth Miller. I am an attorney, sorry. It shows less and less. I'm glad to say it's not quite as obvious as it used to be. I grew up out here. I was talking with one of your members. I grew up in Louisville, which used to be right down the road. Forgive me for the tennis shoes and if I fidget a lot. I have a health issue, so I have to, I'm in the tennis these days, maybe for life, and I'm liking it. I grew up down the road in Louisville, and one of your members was saying that he lives there now and how hard it is because he's from Duncanville, and we were, rivals back in the day. When I grew up in Louisville, it was 40 plus years ago. So like she was saying, it was just a big farm between here and there. And so it's hard for me to be here because these were our rivals, right? When I come to Plano, I'm still thinking, let's go get them. But it's wild how much everything's grown. Louisville and Plano are not what they used to be. So it's really exciting to be here with you guys, even though I still want to trash talk just a little bit. I grew up, I went to Texas, and I grew up, if you will, working for some plaintiffs' attorneys, and then we sued Walmart one day, and that never goes well for anyone, and we had to go try the case, and then the Walmart lawyers started recruiting me, so I did that for a while, and I was GC for an internet startup, and we all did that for a while, and then I've done mostly contractual work for small businesses, and then more and more I've had health issues. I have a connective tissue disease called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, so more and more I've found myself laid up, and then more and more I found myself doing activism and political work. And then in 2012, I found myself, I was a libertarian, and I found myself co-director for the Gary Johnson campaign for the presidential campaign in Texas, sort of overnight. And that was quite an experience. So that's my my biases, if you will. I am a member of the Libertarian Party of Texas. If you go to our website, it'll say all the freedoms all the time. And that would be nice, wouldn't it? So we have a lot in common with you guys. Personal liberty, respect for life, peace, civil liberties, separation of church and state. These are all things we enthusiastically agree with you on, by the way. And what that means in practicality, if you go look at our platform, you'll see we agree on ending the death penalty. We want to reform criminal justice. That's a big area for me personally. Medical freedom, we would open up immigration. So there's a lot philosophically and practically that we agree on, just to give you my personal bias and point of view. But League of Independent Voters is about representing all independent Texans, all of us who, whether we disagree on a lot, we all agree on ending the duopoly, right? Do y'all use that word too?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good one, I like it. So yes, the League of Independent Voters is working on that, and we're really lucky, not just libertarians, you guys, independents, all of us, that Linda and LIV are watching these issues closely. They watch the litigation, they watch the changes in the law, they're down there lobbying the legislature, so please keep a close eye on them, and go sign up and give LIV your email so we can keep in touch. They also have weekly working group meetings. So the last 2 sessions I've been down there logging the ledge, and because of my connective tissue disease, it allows me to talk about medical freedom and access to medical cannabis, and that's what I wanted to be talking about, but we were really busy with ballot access this session. They were really coming after all of us hard in various ways, and I know you have a speaker talking about that, so I won't go on at length, but they were trying to raise filing fees, trying to make everybody a primary party. I don't know how that was gonna work. Trying to increase petition requirements, all that. So they will keep doing that. We beat back a lot of it this session, but count on it, right? That's gonna continue. Don't ever assume that battle's over. The more effective we get, the more they will come after our ballot access. And that takes money and time, and for all of us to be very, very organized. Even though 50% of people consider themselves independents now, and way more than that would like better ballot access, as you guys understand, majority doesn't mean anything, right? We gotta get organized. So I encourage you to follow Linda, and to keep an eye on the other minor parties like the Libertarian Party and other parties, because we all agree on that. And it's a powerful thing I learned to go into a lawmaker's office and be able to say, here's the name of left-leaning grassroots that hate this. I'm here and don't like this. Here's some right, like nobody likes this. This is just Incumbent Protection Act. That's what I call it. It's literally the only rears in the seats that are a fan. So there's plenty of that down there and worthy of our attention. So I may not talk about local versus state control as much as Linda had planned, and I'm sure she'd be thrilled to talk about that with you. But I want to update you briefly on some litigation. I have good news. Miller v. Nelson is some litigation that's been going on since 2019. A couple of sessions ago, not this one, but the one before, not one for that, they're starting to stack up on me. The legislature increased the requirements on minor parties and independents. And forgive me if I start blurring the two. I'm talking about everybody but the duopoly, right? And what they tried to do is, historically, well, many moons ago, the state, many states and jurisdictions tried to start charging filing fees and petition requirements. And the argument was, well, we can't have all these names on the ballot. And I'm going to dumb some of this down, but the Supreme Court of Texas said, well, you can do that, require filing fees and everything with it, because the people opposing this, well, wait a minute, that's a poll tax. You can't keep poor people off the ballot. And the Supreme Court said, well, to the extent you need these fees to avoid ballot, a crowded ballot, then, you can require this. So the filing fees were only required for primary parties, understandably, so they can decide what name's going to be on the ballot. And convention parties, obviously it didn't apply because we can only nominate one person, right? And we do it by convention. It's not on there's no primary ballot to get stuffed. Well, a couple of sessions ago, they go, so what? Let's apply it to them anyway. And they started applying the filing fees to minor party and candidates, which is ridiculous. And in primary party, those fees go back to the party, much of them, and they get to spend them on their race and stuff. Whereas our fees, and I'm talking about y'all too right now, go to the state, and the state spends the money, right? So it's absurd, and of course, we've been litigating that. And part of the reason we should all understand that they will keep coming back every 2 years and tweaking it up is because think about this, the litigation, part of the reason for doing this, even when they know it's inappropriate, and a lot of the ones that vote on it don't even know what they're doing, they're just doing what they're told, right? They don't follow the minutia of all this. And I spent a lot of this session educating them on what they did, that they didn't know they did. But a lot of the point is to get us in litigation, right? That's the whole point, to force all of us to spend all our money down there fighting for ballot access rather than spending it on, media and earning votes and et cetera, right? Or paying the filing fee. So it's really, really important that everybody that would like to end the duopoly or at least have more choice, it's real important we stick together on this and combine our efforts. And there's an organization now that does that, or we can all chip in together. We're fighting this because we're fighting this on behalf of 30 million Texans. All of them deserve choice, right? So Miller v. Nelson has been going on for a while now, and we got a favorable ruling yesterday, and let's all just celebrate and be thankful for that, because we're suing Republicans and Democrats, and the state is Republicans and Democrats, and the judges are Republicans and Democrats. So it's very difficult, even if we, as a lawyer, I may look, well, the law simply says this, and the Supreme Court told us that, and that is clearly unconstitutional. It doesn't always play out that way, right? So yesterday we got a favorable ruling from the district court saying that the paper petitioning is too burdensome. Because what they do to us is they require us to get, and then the legislature will say, well, it's no big deal. It's just a small filing fee, and you can just get the petition signatures, no problem. The problem is those signatures have to be people that didn't participate in the primary. And then you also have this narrow window. And then the rich Republicans and Democrats, who again are sitting in the seats, the people who determine whether your signatures are any good, have plenty of labor and money, right, to go through and find every problem they can possibly find with your signatures. So it is burdensome and it is expensive, and practically speaking, it's really tough. Linda has some guidance for you on this, by the way, but and some other people, but practically speaking, it is very difficult to get the signatures without spending the money, and it ends up being just much more efficient and even cheaper in many ways to just hire people who know what they're doing to get it. So the court looked at that and said, yes, this is too burdensome. Technically speaking, the court didn't say you have to allow them to do this online, but it said by paper is too burdensome. So the implication there is that we will be able to do signatures online, if that ruling stands. Okay, this is just the lower court ruling, and I feel confident that that will be appealed, again, if only to run up our expenses, right? To run out the clock, run up the expenses, and then every 2 years they can come back and tweak the law a little bit, so then we're litigating a whole new issue, and a lot of stuff restarts. So that's the game there. So I think what we want to do is start paying attention to what members of the legislature are willing to do this to us, right? There are a few people that are carrying those bills, promoting those bills, doing the work of the elites in both parties, and we should aim after them and call them out, at least, in my opinion. So let's talk about the implications of that. Linda was telling me that the Texit folks have already been doing some online petitioning. So I don't know if they saw this coming down the track or if they were just getting practiced at it. But I haven't looked at it in depth, but Linda said looking at it, looks like they were following the statute except for that. So maybe they'll be really ready to roll, and maybe they'll be the first ones who get something on a ballot through this means. But again, we'll see if all that's allowed to upheld. This all goes into effect September 1st, generally. I need to double check on this. But on what the court said about when this can be used, but again, it'll all be appealed. So let's talk a little bit about local control versus state control, which is what I was supposed to talk about. This session, perhaps you guys have heard about a new law that they passed called, or it was HB 2127, and it was referred to as the Texas Regulatory Consistency Act. And what this was an attempt basically by the Republican majority, I mean, just let's say what's going on, right? The Republican majority legislature to get some preemption of municipal regulations that are going on in urban areas by primarily left-leaning local governments. And so the argument there is, well, there are all these additional regulations in these cities, and that's bad for business in the state, which, you know, may or may not be true, but then you could still say, well, let them make it bad for business if they want. And so practically speaking, the kind of things we're talking about, I mean, everybody's heard about the New York outlawing stoves and stuff like it. The city wanted to do that, or San Antonio, I think, has a law about extra water breaks for construction workers and things like that. A lot of this is labor related in function, or at least from that perspective, but it can imply a whole lot of other things, right? You know, requirements about certain health coverage maybe, or, you know, that people be allowed to use who knows, right? Cannabis, who knows? All different kinds of regulations, but primarily a lot of it's labor and environmental, both of which are issues of which interest you guys, right? So the question is, will these local measures be preempted? But the real question is, who will challenge, right? Who's going to be willing to spend the money to litigate these issues? And so some of the bigger left-leaning cities may decide to do that. I think San Antonio was already talking about, hey, maybe we should go ahead and start challenging one of these so we can see what we're dealing with. And then from the state's perspective, obviously, it's not their money. They're willing to spend our money to, defend the law. That's a no-brainer. So I think we'll see litigation on this. I know we will. The question is, what will it look like and how long will it take and what will that mean? But I think the bottom line is, I don't think we'll see a lot of meaningful changes, whether it's to improve business or hurt labor regulations. Either way, I think in the short term, we'll see a lot of litigation. Some other ways that we have seen, and I'm sorry to be so focused on the session, but that's where I've spent the whole year. All my energy, it's like sofa. Nobody was paying me to be there either, so I was riding sofas, catching rides and everything. A couple other local versus state controls issues that I see, and one of the other things I worked on was just legal shenanigans, I call it. Because I'm a lawyer and I've done litigation, represented the world's largest retailer throughout Texas, people call me about different, hey, have you seen this? Have you seen that? And something they did this session freaks me out a little bit that we didn't talk about it more in the media, maybe because property tax and the whole trans this and that. Every session, there's an issue or two that soaks up all the oxygen in the room, and then all this other stuff happens and nobody's paying attention. A couple of the things I was noticing this time are, we got something called a business court, and other states have this, and I'm sort of surprised we didn't do this sooner in some ways. And then we got an extra court of appeals. And in Texas, the courts of appeals are geographical, like many places, and we had 14 of them, and we just added a 15th. Now, the business court is going to catch complex business litigation all over the state. So the way this traditionally works in the common law system, all across the country, well, asterisk, except maybe Louisiana, when you're in law school, you learn things, well, this is true across the country. And then it's always like, well, maybe not Louisiana because they're French. So everything I say, assume there's an asterisk. I don't know about Louisiana. Got no clue. But the rest of the country, generally speaking, You sue where the event happens, or where, if it's a business, where they're incorporated is another option of a place to sue. Y'all know this, everybody's been sued or sued just about. So the business court would throw everything in one court. And the idea there is, the argument was, well, some of these judges and some of these places, they might end up with a real complex litigation, and some of these yeehaw judges and yeehaw parts of the state might not be able to follow all this really well. So we should probably send it all to the business court where these guys see this stuff every, well, yeah, that's great if you're the big business, right? And guess who appoints those judges, right? The governor. And the other thing they're doing is they're getting around all this with, so the Constitution, remember that, of Texas says that they can't just create new judges. It lays out under what circumstances, and they're basically trying to get around that without making us, getting our permission to amend the Constitution. And they've created this new court, and even though they're exactly the kind of judges that says they can't create, they're calling it something else, pretending, and then only giving them 2-year terms because the Constitution says it's supposed to be this many and you're supposed to do it this way, and they're trying to get around everything. So we got a business court. We'll see how that plays out. I agree that it could potentially be better. I am in favor of a business court that's completely consensual, right? You got a complex litigation case, all the parties agree it will be better off in the business court where it's gonna move better and all that, great. A lot of the businesses were in there arguing, well, we need a court that moves more quickly and more efficiently, and this is costing Texans money. I agree. Let's speed it up for everybody, though. Why should I, as a small person, have to wait and suffer longer just because you're a big thing? Pay more for it. That's the other thing I have, is let's let them pay for that. Let's make the fees cover the costs. But again, that's my bias. So we did the business court. The other thing we did was government court. This is the one there. So it's basically the same concept, only if you sue the government, you get thrown into this 15th Court of Appeals, which is statewide. What? So the government makes the rules, makes the laws, chooses the judges, and then tells you, since you do that one Court of Appeals, I just think it's insanely unfair. But that's what we did without even really talking about it. I want to thank you guys again for existing. I want to encourage you to go visit the League of Independent Voters. Please go there and give them your email. Give us your email so we can keep up to date with you. The other thing is Liv has put together a tremendous survey that Linda would very much like you to fill out in return, especially if you're in Texas. We want to be able to show these lawmakers and policymakers how Texans feel about ballot access and having a voice. I hope you will visit, I didn't bring my cards up here, I'll send them out later. I have created an organization. I've been doing this activism thing for a while, and I decided I needed to finally officially create an organization and put my efforts under it. It's called autonomoustexan.com. And I will continue to focus on medical freedom. I use the fact that I have a connective tissue disease and I'm a lawyer to get me in the door, right? To talk to them about medical freedom and medical access to cannabis, which I feel strongly about because I wouldn't be here without it. So I feel like those circumstances together, I've been called to continue to work on this. So I appreciate you checking me out. I hope you'll check out the Libertarian Party and the Libertarian Party of Texas. Not that I'm trying to recruit, I'm sure recruit, come on over, but because I want you to know where we agree. And so when you're working on something locally, you're wanting to go, protest because of some deaths in the jail, or whatever, ending the death penalty, a lot of the things you guys get excited about. We will show up, well, hopefully, we'll be there to show up for you. And there's a lot we can work on. And then, if you guys get down to the ballot box and you don't see anybody that jazzes you and we're on there, I promise you they interpret that as a protest vote, especially if you're in an area, they may think that, sometimes if you're left leaning, they may count your vote already. So they notice if they don't get it, put it that way. So I invite you to always consider that. Again, thank you so much for having me, and I'll take questions if y'all have time.